I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is called for our virtual seminar on the privacy rule, HIPAA Bedrock Explained and Demystified. So now I would like to introduce our presenter for today. His name is Paul R. Hales. Paul R. Hales, JD, is widely recognized for his ability to explain HIPAA rules clearly in plain language. He is an attorney licensed to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States, a graduate of Columbia University Law School, and senior counselor of the Missouri Bar with an international practice in HIPAA privacy and security. So now I would like to hand over the floor back to our speaker. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to all. We're going to talk about the privacy rule, and for those of you who have seen the description of this program, on the screen now you see my information. Who has to comply with HIPAA? Who do the HIPAA rules apply to? Now, one of the handouts that you have received, so let's just take a quick look at what we are going to cover and break it down. We're going to do an overview of the HIPAA rules, and we're going to explain, and this is important, why protecting health information privacy is important, how HIPAA defines protected health information. We'll show the development of the HIPAA rules, and you know, we'll look at the HIPAA Privacy Rule in a little more depth. And I want to then talk about the liability for compliance with the HIPAA rules. And we'll talk about the protection of protected health information, growing from that privacy rule requirement that you have in place. I'm going to talk about the HIPAA audit protocols and about risk analysis and risk management. They would have been able to manage it. And then we'll have some an opportunity for questions. So let's go ahead with the overview of the HIPAA rule. So the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. So the initial round of regulations created under HIPAA were the privacy rule, the enforcement rule, and the security rule. And we're talking here about the HIPAA rules. And ever since the privacy rule came into effect, both within the healthcare industry and the general public, what HIPAA doesn't do, it absolutely does not protect all health-related information. The privacy rule is made up of standards. So those are conditions that apply to protected health information. The security rule focuses on protected health information that's maintained or transmitted electronically. Why protecting health information privacy is important. Let's look at an example of organizational problems. This is Equifax. That wasn't. So the HIPAA rules are enforced by government agencies, as I've said, and that can include civil money and criminal penalties. So medical identity theft and the criminal black market that I mentioned earlier. Here's an FBI warning. The Department of Health and Human Services, Inspector General, the fact is that protected health information is the gold standard. On Facebook, if someone posts on a page, criminals attack people of all ages and all walks of life, and they use what they call social engineering, and they have clever scripts and messages. And the CISA, the new cybersecurity, so protecting medical identity really gets down once again to those fundamentals that I was talking about earlier, the HIPAA rules. It's also something that you should look at when you're assessing business associates, recognizing during your risk analysis and risk management. The largest breach in history so far was a health insurance company. So let's look at the HIPAA definition of protected health information. It's identifying information that's linked to health care. This list of identifiers was published in 2003, developed under HIPAA, and then the HITECH Act, Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act. If they're focused on the privacy rule, they tend to come from a hospital administration or an administrative background. If they're focused on the security rule, they don't consider them to be silos. They're designed to work together to protect the privacy and security of protected health information. The privacy rule establishes administrative, technical, and physical safeguards to protect protected health information. The privacy rule is made up of standards, implementation specifications, and the privacy rule standards cover these three topics. Uses and disclosures of protected health information. Uses and disclosures of protected health information, the privacy rights of an individual. They have the right to receive a notice of privacy practices. That the administrative requirements of the privacy rule. Now we've gone through the covered entity and business associate descriptions. So there is a chain of trust and the business associate. Now, the business associate security official, the one that is to develop on behalf of the covered entity and the business associate, and the privacy and security officials have to work together. Business associate security rule compliance by not making uses or disclosures that would violate the privacy rule, protected health information, required by the secretary to investigate. It's about fundamentals and risk analysis and risk management, procedures to safeguard to protect their physical security. So who's let into the facility? Within the facility, under the security rule for transmission, the former director of OCR said this, the audit protocols. So the HIPAA audits phase 2 conducted beginning in 2016, the audits were graded on a scale of 1 to 5. Audit report that came out at the end of 2020, I think they waited to release it, of covered entities and business associates that passed risk analysis, and it gave advice. You've got to have the policies, procedures to reduce risks and vulnerabilities. That's risk management based on your risk analysis, and identify those risks. Why did so many fail? Well, there are a lot of reasons, but I'm going to explain, and I'm sorry to run through this quickly, but you will have. So the sources, the places that we got these steps. Here is the table of contents of the interactive risk analysis, risk management. When you go to risk analysis, risk management, risks of the location of protected health information, starting with electronic protected. We also coined a phrase called non-EPHI, in assembling information. Who has access to it? Your workforce members. Are they trained? Business associates that have access. The security rule checklist. This is what everybody calls an SRA. What's required? They're called security measures. Here is the guidance that I mentioned earlier, who was assigned to deal with this, the HIPAA rules, and explaining why the privacy rule is so fundamental and so important. So I want to thank you very much for your attendance. And with that, I'm going to sign off and end the webinar and wish you the very best in your HIPAA compliance programs.